Hi, it's Winton Churchill with the Barefoot Consultants, and I'd like to welcome you to our All right, we're going to try again here. We got a few gremlins in the system. And I'd like to welcome you to our Tuesday question and answer Tuesday. And we're also going to talk about a topic this week about setting your rates. And that's a hot topic of freelancers around the world. And this is a time where a lot of people, if they're freelancing now, sit down and evaluate what their rates are. And if they're not freelancing now, but want to be, they're wondering, okay, what are my rates? How do I set them? That kind of thing. One of the platforms that we teach on is the Upwork system. And all the platforms work a little differently, but the fundamental concepts apply across most of them. And that's a little bit of what we're going to talk about today as we go through this. And so, um, a lot of confusion about rates because most people say, well, when you set rates, it's an hourly rate. Typically, there's a place to put in an hourly rate on every online network. So people just automatically assume that they have to come up with an hourly rate. And in some cases, you do. But most jobs done on these networks are not done at hourly rates, they're done on a fixed price basis. And usually, when a freelance buyer is out there looking for new talent, which if you haven't worked for them before, you're considered new talent, they will go out and they will give somebody a small hourly job at whatever rate they put in there and sort of audition that person to see if they're a good fit for the job. And many times that audition would be comparable to a job interview that you go out on. And as a result, the practice of many freelancers is to not pay a lot for that first job. They just want to get a sense of who you are and what kind of work you do, and do you produce things of quality and that sort of thing. And once they've figured that out, they'll go ahead and uh, hire you on an ongoing basis, or decide that you're not a good fit for what they want done. And the so the let's talk a little bit about what bidding at a fixed price does for the freelance buyer. When you bid at a fixed price on a simple job or even a complex job, it shows that you have a good grasp of your skills and your understanding of the job. One of the concerns from the very early days of these online networks is people will post an hourly rate and then they'll say, it'll take me 5 hours to complete this job. And then they come back to the person and say, oops, it looks like this is going to take longer. Well, whose responsibility is that? Freelance buyers don't like engagements whose expense keeps growing. And that's a very frustrating thing for those guys. And if you are in that category, the buyer is less likely to do ongoing work with you because they feel like you may not have a command. And in many cases, many of the freelancers bidding on jobs don't have a command of the task to be done. They don't have the confidence to bid a fixed price. So above all, it's a fixed price is confidence. And that says a lot to the buyer that you really know what you're doing. And in particular, baby boomers have an advantage in this area because they do have the experience. They have decades of experience in doing many of the things that they could possibly do online. So that's an important thing to understand about that fixed rate. And for that reason, it's not something to get fixated on it. The second thing we want to talk about is, what rate do you put in? The Upwork system now requires that you put a rate in there. And we suggest between $30 and $50 an hour because that helps move you up into the mid-range to expert class in terms of people that are providing service. There's a lot of people at the shallow end of the pool, and you don't want to be that person. You don't want to sell yourself short. Now, the important thing to understand is that that rate has nothing to do with the price you bid on any specific job. It's a rate. It's like a number on your resume that says this is what I usually work for per hour. But if you are somebody who enjoys stamp collecting and might be willing to help people with that, but you also have the ability to use a complex piece of software that in your regular job you might be paid $100 an hour to use that software. You set up a scenario where some jobs, just out of pure interest, you might want to bid at a lower rate. And then when a job is more like exactly what you know how to do at work and exactly the piece of software that you've been working on for 10 or 15 years, then you can set a much higher rate on that. And so what the buyer sees, even though if they dig into your profile, they can see your hourly rate, but what the buyer is typically going to go for is they're going to go for the rate that you bid the job at. So that's an important thing to understand. Most buyers will never even take a look at your rate because they will know more from looking at the quality of your work than looking at your rate. And we have people in our various programs who bid rates that vary all over the map, from $20 an hour to $100 an hour. The $100 an hour is typically the things where one of our members has deep training, deep skill, deep experience, and the $20 an hour is where they don't so much have that, and I mean, they might bid $30 an hour because maybe they're partway there, but it's a little bit like a boss I used to work for. He was quite the, what would you say, quite the interesting guy. He said, if you go to a new city and you're hungry and you need to make money to get a hotel room and get a good meal, he said, go drive a taxi because taxis pay you at the end of the day for what you drive. And it's a great way to do that sort of urban survival tip. Now, probably not that way anymore because, you probably have to get a taxi certificate and go through a process and that kind of thing. But 30 years ago, that was the idea. Well, the similar idea exists on these networks because you can go onto a network. It might take you a few days to get on there. But once you're on there, you can do the equivalent of driving taxis in the $15 to $20 an hour range and be making some money and be getting comfortable with the idea of driving taxis. Or you could be bidding $50 to $100 an hour for things that you very specifically know how to do. So important concept to understand is that working for a low rate or a low hourly rate is not a way to climb the freelancing ladder. And we recommend that you work on that fixed price. Now, there are some jobs that you can't work fixed price on, really. There are things like customer service, for example, because they want to cover customer service for a period of time, and that's what they're looking to do. We want to cover customer service from 1 to 5, so you're just on the clock 1 to 5, and you're taking anything that calls in. There are some customer service guys, very small percentage, that might work on a percentage of calls handled, or or a fixed price for emails handled, up to 5 an hour, 10 an hour, whatever that might be. But in most cases, your customer service jobs are going to wind up being hourly jobs. So that's something that flies in opposition to what we recommend, but certainly acceptable behavior if you want to work on customer service jobs, which now, in the period of time where we're in the pandemic and the lockdown and all that kind of stuff, what we're seeing is a lot of people kind of like that. I'm going to be on the phone, or I'm going to be on email from this time to that time, and I'm going to be making $15 an hour. Not a lot of money, but I was just going to be sitting on the couch otherwise, so I can work there for 4 or 5 hours and come away even at a relatively modest compensation while I'm figuring out how this whole freelancing thing works. I'm still putting $60 a day in my pocket, or whatever you work out with a person, and that is certainly real money that helps offset your grocery expenses and rent and some of the other things that you might have. And so that's kind of the third thing to know about setting your rates. The next thing and final thing that we want to talk about in setting your rates is, as your client gets to know the depth and breadth of your skill set over time, they are willing to pay you more. And so where you might start out doing a simple proofreading job for one client, if they get to know you better and understand that you know a lot about the topic area that you're doing the proofreading in, they may come along and want to assign you writing jobs, or jobs that involve creating a PowerPoint presentation or that kind of thing. And once they understand your greater skill set, that's a good thing. One of the problems with most potential problems in that situation is too many freelancers sort of pounce on that first job, and that's what they want to do. And they say things like, and there's lots of other stuff I can do for you, and I can do this, and I can do that. And the buyer first wants to establish that you're a good freelancer for them. So it might take 2 or 3 of those relatively low-level jobs, low-paying jobs, for the buyer to get a feel for you. And you may have either worked in situations as a manager, or worked in situations as an employee where you were interviewing for a job, and they start out with 20 applicants, and then they narrow it down to 10, and then they have a second round of interviews, and then they narrow it down to 3 or 4, and then they have a third round of interviews. And that's what you want to think of this kind of process of doing little tiny jobs for them, less than $100 in total, where they get to know you, where they get to have a conversation with you, where they get to understand your background and your expertise. And of course, if you're going through our program, you want to feature that expertise in your profile so they get an inkling of that. But ideally, that becomes a discussion topic on an email or on a telephone conversation, or that kind of thing. So that's the kind of thing that you're looking for. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions you might have. You can just type them in there, um, and I'll be happy to answer any of those. And it's interesting. This is a great and very busy time of the year for us because a lot of people that put off getting set up to freelance now are saying, damn it, this is the year that I'm going to do this, and they realized coming through last year how maybe not so solid their employment might be. We've seen a lot of people that even their employment is continued, but they've said, it's shaky. And they realize based on what happened in March last year that their job may not have been as secure as they once thought it was. So lots of things going on, lots of things moving people to freelancing. The other thing we see moving demand for freelancing is lots of companies that never thought they could use remote workers had quite a course on how to get remote workers working successfully. And a remote worker could be an employee, that's one form, but a remote worker could also be a freelancer. And the great thing about having a freelancer is that person can plug into your organization maybe during times of peak activity and that kind of thing, and be a little extra help for a month or two, and then unplug for your organization. They go off and work for other clients of theirs. But then when you have that same need again, you bring them back into the organization. And so you're not paying for that person full-time year round. And, there's some benefits that accrue to that. Number one, whatever the task is, they're a little bit fresher on that task typically versus your employees that are working year round. Typically, they have better expertise because that's all the kind of thing that they do. So if somebody is good at making PowerPoint presentations for an annual sales meeting or that kind of thing, and they get brought in a month or two in advance of the sales meeting to put all those presentations together with Bang, Zoom, Wow, graphics, and all that kind of stuff, that's the person you want. You don't want Charlie, who's been with your organization for 5 years, and he's the only one that knows how to do PowerPoint, and his PowerPoints don't look very good, but he's the one, he's the one you got. So lots of good ways to tap that extra talent, showcase what you're doing, and move into a situation where, number one, you at least have a plan B in case your job takes a dip of one kind or another. Or number two, you finally make the move to freelancing. A lot of people have been laid off. Certainly difficult to go out and look for jobs now. Companies don't know quite what their staffing is going to be as they come back, what kind of administrative load they're going to have complying with all the new health regulations, what kind of training activities they're going to have. There's all big question marks around these right now, but the path forward in 2021, all those things will solidify. So with that, have a great week freelancing. For those of you in our programs, I'll see you all next Tuesday night for our live session. And we'll look forward to seeing you back here next Friday at noon Central Time. And like to say, give a big welcome to all of those listening to you on the replay of this. About typically 95% of the people that see this are on the replay, but I want to tell you your questions matter. So drop them in to the chat window and we'll keep answering those through the week. So great to see you and look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.